When talking about Marvel and DC, the so-called Big Two, there tends to be a consensus on each universe's relative trinity. For DC, it's simple: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. That's pretty easy. For Marvel, Spider-Man is the undisputed king and appears on literally everyone's Mount Rushmore. The Incredible Hulk is usually right behind him, and Wolverine often claims the third spot. But with both universes, when we get to number 4, that's when things get interesting. The question of who's the fourth face on the mountain is one of the most hotly debated topics in all of comics, and it has been for quite a while. Depending on who you ask for Marvel, it could be Captain America, Iron Man, Professor X, the Fantastic Four themselves, Doctor Doom, Daredevil. There's dozens of other characters that you could pick. So before we start just throwing names around, we need to answer a bigger question. How do you actually decide who belongs on a comic book Mount Rushmore? Is it popularity, story quality, historical importance, cultural impact, longevity, merchandise sales, movie success? It's a lot to try to quantify. And does it even have to be a hero? Can villains like the Joker or Doctor Doom earn a place on the mountain because of their influence on the medium? Can an entire team like the X-Men qualify because of their impact to comics and pop culture as a whole? Or should Mount Rushmores be limited to individual characters because historically they always have been? The more you think about it, the more complicated this entire question becomes. For me, a character's candidacy comes down to a few key categories. Cultural recognition and branding, which is basically how recognizable the character is to someone who has never read a comic book. Simple. Everyone knows Superman's S, everyone knows the bat from Batman, and everyone knows the Spider-Man symbol. Easy. Historical significance. Did they help define an era, expand their universe, or change the industry in a meaningful way? The third is longevity and consistency. Have they remained relevant across multiple generations? Someone like Daredevil. Their impact on the universe. How important are they to the identity and the mythology of Marvel or DC? And later on down the line, who knows, we could do Image Comics. That'll be fun. Lastly, mainstream influence. Did they break out beyond comics through films, television, animation, video games, and even merchandise? Using those criteria, it's easy to understand why some characters dominate these conversations. Comic purists often point towards characters like Captain America and Professor X because of their foundational roles on Marvel's two biggest teams that have influenced decades of Marvel storytelling.
Is it better to be feared or respected? And I say, is it too much to ask for both? With that in mind, I humbly present the crown jewel of Stark Industries' Freedom Line. It's the first missile system to incorporate our proprietary repulsor technology. They say the best weapon is one you never have to fire. I respectfully disagree. I prefer the weapon you only have to fire once. That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out pretty well so far. Find an excuse to let one of these off the chain, and I personally guarantee you the bad guys won't even want to come out of their caves. For your consideration, the Jericho.
Meanwhile, modern audiences often champion Iron Man, who, of course, with his rise through the MCU, transformed him from just a popular comic book character into one of the most recognizable heroes on the planet. Neither side is necessarily wrong. They're simply valuing different criteria. And that's why this conversation is just fascinating to me. There may never ever, let me say that again, there may never ever be a definitive Mount Rushmore. Every fan values different things, and every generation has its own icons. But for this video, I want to examine a group of characters I believe have legitimate claim to the mountain or mountains, and make the case for why they deserve consideration. Let's get to the candidates, starting with Marvel. Iron Man. This one feels like a no-brainer. Long before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Tony Stark was already one of Marvel's defining characters. He starred in legendary stories like Demon in a Bottle, Armor Wars, and Extremis, while playing pivotal roles in universe-shaking events like Civil War. Comic readers always knew Iron Man was one of Marvel's heavy hitters, but outside of comics, he wasn't always viewed that way. Then came 2008. Thanks in large part to Robert Downey Jr.'s iconic portrayal, Iron Man became a global phenomenon. The success of the film didn't just redefine Tony Stark, it launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe, forever changing superheroes and elevating Iron Man from essentially an A-list comic hero to one of the most recognizable fictional characters in the world. But the MCU alone isn't enough to earn him a place on Marvel's Mount Rushmore. Tony Stark's true importance lies in how deeply he's woven into the fabric of Marvel. Few characters influence Marvel's status quo more than Iron Man. Whether he's inventing revolutionary technology, financing superhero teams, creating world-changing inventions, or making impossible ethical decisions, Tony's actions ripple throughout the entire universe. I mean, the man's a futurist. He's always thinking ahead. He's led the Avengers, founded ForceWorks, helped establish the Illuminati, and has been one of the driving forces behind Marvel's biggest stories for decades. Love him or hate him, I don't think many people hate him, when the Marvel Universe changes, there's a good chance Tony Stark is at the center of it. He's also become one of Marvel's greatest legacy characters. Every era seems to redefine Iron Man in a way that reflects the world around him. Just look at Joshua Williamson's current run. The man is essentially rebooting the character. He went from a Cold War industrialist to a futurist inventor, a flawed alcoholic, a global statesman, from a superhero to an architect of tomorrow. Few heroes evolve with the times as naturally as Tony Stark. Iron Man's fingerprints and actions are felt everywhere within the Marvel Universe. He just might make it onto the Mount Rushmore.
I could do this all day.
If there's any one character who feels like they were made for this Mount Rushmore, it's Captain America. I mean, what's more American than being on the face of America's symbol, or one of America's symbols? He's the first Avenger, the Sentinel of Liberty, the man who famously punched Hitler in the face before America even entered World War II. Just on imagery alone, Captain America earned his place as one of the most iconic heroes ever created. As one of Marvel's earliest and most enduring characters, Steve Rogers has stood at the center of the Marvel Universe forever. He's the natural leader that heroes rally behind, the soldier who never stops fighting for what's right, and he's essentially the moral compass of the superhero community. He grounds everyone when things start falling apart. Unlike many heroes though, Captain America's importance isn't really tied to his powers, it's more tied to what he represents. Stories like The Winter Soldier, Death of Captain America Reborn, and The Man Out of Time have shown why Steve Rogers continues to resonate decade after decade. At his best, Captain America isn't just fighting villains, he's more challenging the Marvel Universe as a whole to live up to its ideals. That's why so many readers view him as Marvel's equivalent to Superman. Now, of course, not because of what he can do, but because of who he is. When people think of hope, leadership, sacrifice, and the ideals America strives to represent, they probably think of Captain America. He's the hero other heroes look to for guidance. He's your favorite hero's favorite hero. the standard by which many are judged, and he's one of the clearest symbols that Marvel's ever created. He's not just a founding pillar of Marvel history, he's the Marvel Universe's conscience. And based on all this, I think he might belong on the Mount Rushmore.
No, Vic. It's clobbering time.
Say it! I don't wanna! Say it! It's clobbering time!
To many, the Thing might be an unconventional choice on the list, but there's a strong argument that Ben Grimm actually deserves a place on Marvel's Mount Rushmore. Not because he's the most powerful hero, and not even because he's the most popular hero, but because he's the heart of the Marvel Universe. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Ben Grimm embodies one of the core ideas that helped define Marvel from the very beginning. Heroes with real problems. Unlike gods, super soldiers, or billionaire geniuses, Ben was an ordinary man. He was tough, working class, a pilot from New York's Lower East Side whose life was permanently changed by circumstances he can't control. We can all relate to that. For decades, Ben has struggled with his transformation into the Thing. While other heroes gained powers and saw them as gifts, he often viewed his gift as a curse. His ongoing battle with his appearance, self-image, and his place in the world gave readers something they didn't often find in superhero comics. A character who felt genuinely human beneath the superpowers. In many ways, Ben Grimm is the emotional foundation of the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family. While Reed Richards provides the intellect, Sue Storm the compassion, and Johnny the energy, Ben is the soul of the team. He's the friend who keeps everyone else grounded and the source of much of the team's humor, and often he's the moral center when things fall apart. There's a strong argument that Ben Grimm represents something even larger. Many fans view him as Jack Kirby's personal avatar within the Marvel Universe, a tough, resilient New Yorker who refuses to quit no matter how hard life hits him. Whether it's intentional or not, Ben carries much of the working class spirit that helped shape Marvel's identity. The man's knocked out Galactus, fought Hulk toe-to-toe numerous times, Thor, and various other powerhouses like the Champion, and he was never afraid. That's something all of us can pretty much look up to. I mean, the Thing is just awesome. How many of us can relate to fighting or standing in the face of something that we know is probably going to destroy us, or that we know we can't fully take on alone, but we do it anyway? That's the Thing. And then there's New York itself. Marvel has always been deeply connected to New York, and very few characters embody that connection better than Ben Grimm. He's loud, stubborn, loyal, compassionate, and unapologetically authentic. In many ways, he's the living embodiment of the city's grit and heart. The Thing may never be Marvel's biggest superstar, but he represents something just as important. He reminds us that heroism isn't about looking perfect or having the greatest superpowers. It's about getting back up, staying true to yourself, and fighting on no matter what life throws at you. And, given all that, that's probably why Ben Grimm belongs on this mountain.
Aren't those rear batteries firing? Somebody get General Wilson on the horn!
Colonel Fury,
Doom, I'll have your head for this.
I have little time for your petty threats, Colonel. Surrender your ship now, or I shall destroy it.
Not on my watch.
Dr. Doom.
If the Mount Rushmore is meant to honor the most influential figures in Marvel history, then Dr. Doom definitely deserves some serious consideration. In my opinion, he's the greatest character in all of fiction. Dr. Doom's my GOAT. But he's not just a villain. Dr. Doom is, as of right now, and given all his history, he's a cornerstone of the Marvel Universe itself. He was also created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Dr. Doom has spent more than 6 decades defining what a comic book supervillain can be. While many villains are obstacles for heroes to overcome, Doom is something much rarer. He's a character who can carry entire stories on his own. Now, what makes Dr. Doom unique is that he's far more than a mad scientist or a power-hungry tyrant. On the surface, he may look like that, but there's way more to it. He's simultaneously one of, if not the greatest scientific mind on Earth, and he's also one of the most powerful sorcerers in the Marvel Universe. He's also the ruler of an entire nation, and a man driven by a tragic mix of pride, ambition, and genuine self-belief that only he is fit to save and rule the world. That's why Doom has remained relevant across generations. Whether he's battling the Fantastic Four, challenging the Avengers, stealing the powers of cosmic beings, or ruling all of reality itself, Doom always feels like a legitimate threat. And unlike most villains, Doom occasionally proves that his arrogance isn't entirely unfounded. I mean, let's just look at the latest story to involve Doom, One World Under Doom. He actually made a better world. The man essentially stole the title of Sorcerer Supreme and the power from Doctor Strange during an event when Blade was whooping up on the superheroes, then became ruler of Earth after putting multiple beatdowns on the Avengers, actually made the world a better place, and he basically had to negate his own power or lose his own power just so they can win and everything can go back to normal. That's how dope Doctor Doom is. Stories like the Books of Doom, Triumph and Torment, and Secret Wars have elevated him beyond the role of a traditional antagonist. He's a conqueror, a monarch, scientist, sorcerer, and at times, he's even an anti-hero. Some of Marvel's greatest stories aren't even about the heroes defeating Doom. They're about understanding why Doom believes he's right. His influence also stretches across the entire Marvel universe. While many villains are tied to a single hero, Doom's shadow falls over nearly everyone. Now, mainly with the Fantastic Four, especially in the early parts, but he's also gone to the Avengers, Spider-Man, the X-Men. Countless cosmic characters have crossed paths with Victor Von Doom. His presence is also so significant that Marvel's biggest events often feel larger the moment Doom enters the story. Because when Doom drops in a story, it's big.
Something's coming.
Most importantly, Doom represents something essential to Marvel: ambition without limits. He's the embodiment of what happens when brilliance, determination, and ego become inseparable. There are great Marvel villains, don't get me wrong. Then there's Doctor Doom, a character so iconic, so influential, so enduring, that many fans don't just consider him Marvel's greatest villain, they consider him one of Marvel's greatest characters, period. I mean, the man's about to save the MCU. And that's why Doctor Doom has a very, very legitimate claim to his place on the mountain. Hey, I just want to thank y'all for making it to the end of the video. This is part 1 in what's probably going to be a series, but I'm working on part 2. We're going to be covering DC. Now, you're probably wondering, man, he left out a lot of people. That video would be like an hour. All right, so this was more kind of like a test to see how do we quantify and try to figure out what even qualifies as a Mount Rushmore. So if you guys have any ideas, any objections, drop them down below in the comments. Let me know who you think is going to be or should be considered for the DC's 4th person on Mount Rushmore, or if you disagree that the Trinity should even be up there. I appreciate everybody that stayed here. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for next time, everybody. Peace. See y'all later.